Hello and welcome to the Good Friday edition of the personal learning course. When I was planning for this course, I forgot that it was Good Friday. So I'm going to keep it brief, we're going to keep it light, and we're going to keep it brief and light as we do the personal learning course. I'm in the home office. I slept in today. I have 4 days off. So I don't want to spend too much time doing this, but I did promise that we were going to do this, and so we're going to do this. This week we talked about the Learning and Performance Support Systems project, or program, I should say. For those of you who don't recall, LPSS is our current attempt to build a personal learning environment at National Research Council. We looked at the LPSS.me environment, went in, did a tour around, had people sign up and take a tour around themselves. So one glitch that we ran into, only about a third of the people who signed up, a lot of people signed up, but only about a third of the people who signed up actually went into the environment. So this tells me there's something not quite right, obviously. And what is not quite right? Probably the email confirmation that you get. So right now I want to encourage you, if you signed up and you didn't go in and it was because you didn't see the email confirmation, I'm just wondering what that dot is. It's a dot. Check your, check your spam folder, look around for your email. You might have typed your email address incorrectly. That happens reasonably frequently, so you might want to check that. Give it another shot and have a look around. I will say this though, the next version that we're working on avoids a lot of these problems, and when you start it, you just start and you're in and you're doing things, and we don't have these horrible problems. So what else do we want to do? So I showed you the picture of me and the cat working on personal learning. So there have been some things online that have been talked about with respect to the personal learning course. Let's see if I can't share the screen here. It does allow me to do that, of course. So here's the screen share. We've got the Women's Learning Studio saying personal learning is in your future. And so they've been working on this. I'll run this in my newsletter and in the personal learning newsletter today. And it's interesting. Carnegie Mellon's Robert E. Kelly says the percentage of the knowledge you need to memorize to do your job is shrinking rapidly from 75% in 1986 to 8 to 10% today. Well, 10 years ago. It's probably even less today. So what we need to be able to do is to be able to learn on the fly. And the way you learn on the fly is not by memorizing a bunch of content ahead of time. The way you learn on the fly is you practice and do, practice and do. And it creates feedback. And by doing the work that you're doing, you create your learning, as I say, on the fly. So like I say, we'll link to this in the newsletter. Let's have a look now at the Open edX website. So you never know what you're going to get with computers. So we'll pop in openedx.me. I know that people have been submitting some comments about their experiences in the LPSS environment. So we'll pop into the discussion here. So here we go. Personal versus personalized learning environment. So here is the discussion about the question that was asked the other day but the distinction between personal and personalized learning. So we have Emma talking about, I'd see a personalized learning as something that someone or thing else has put together, selected tools, etc., useful gurus to follow, etc., etc. While personal learning is one that the learner has self-developed. They've selected components. And she says, I suspect the best is to have a bit of both. The personal gives ownership and all the benefits that brings. And on the other hand, the personalization may suggest tools, resources, people, etc. So that's an interesting perspective. As the comment here says, an important question. I certainly do think that making recommendations and suggestions is useful and should be done. I think there's a difference between those recommendations and suggestions being the only thing you can follow and those recommendations and suggestions being an option that you can follow. And, I mean, we look at, for example, the current debate that has taken place between the Facebook algorithm and the proposed Twitter algorithm, where instead of just showing you things in reverse chronological order, they show you recommended things or important things, etc. And there's been a big debate. Is it? It's either Instagram or Snapchat. I can find out really quickly. Where sorry, I have to look to type. So yeah, well, let's check the news here. The big debate, either Instagram or Snapchat. Here we go. And they're saying that, yeah, it's Instagram. They're saying that, no, we're not going to do that anymore. We're going to show you the most relevant photos according to our algorithm. And so now we're going to prioritize posts based on what we think is most important. And the backlash began. And people do not want to see the most relevant post, quote unquote, because relevant generally also means advertising, and this isn't particularly what people want. So like I say, I think that personal learning does benefit from the addition of recommendations, but I think that the addition of recommendations is part of personal learning, and it becomes personalized learning when all you've got are the recommendations. Like personalized learning does not mean you have no choice at all. It means you have choices, but among the limited options that you've been given. Right? Personal learning means that you have choices, and they may include options that you've been given, but you are not required to follow those options. So I think that's a fairly important point to make. Another comment, Stephen P. Personal, adjective, is something that you own, something that is personal to you, to change and adapt as you see fit, possibly the way you use your browser with links and addition of extensions, etc. Personalized, on the other hand, is something that is done for you. Your experience with Amazon, for example, recommending what you should buy or read. Now, I think that's getting it closer. Chet's saying, I like both Emma and Stephen's responses, and would add the nuance that some systems do grant the learner some power to select for themselves what their interaction with the system should look like. Okay, now, and this is personalized, right? For example, the learner could be allowed to change the color screen or which widgets show up where on the screen. But you see what's happening here, right? You're selecting from a set of colors. You're selecting from a set of widgets. Personal learning means that you could, well, I don't know how it would work for colors, right? There are 14 million colors. Are you able to pick any of the 14 million, or any possible color as opposed to a particular color scheme? With personalized learning, you're selecting from a set of widgets. With personal learning, you can turn anything into a widget. See the distinction? Okay. I think that PLE, says Louis, is something you do and something that can talk about how do you learn. So PLE could be like Sinatra's My Way. Sure, I'm not going to sing My Way. On the other hand, personalized learning maybe points to a customized environment, probably related to a more passive role of participants through the process of learning. So you walk the path which other people have designed for you, considering different determined profiles. Yeah, and sometimes that path branches and sometimes that path loops, but you're still walking a path. Actually, we need a certain path, I think he meant path, to develop any learning itinerary. This includes, for me, a balance between emotion, motivation, initiative, creativity, and openness, and content curriculum sequences, all the customizable stuff. So that's an interesting question. And in the development of our technology, one of the things that comes up is a learning path generator. Do we want a learning path generator? Is this something we want the system to build for you? How much effort should we put into a learning path generator? But, you know, there's two views on that. A learning path gets you where you want to go, right? But a learning path often gets you to predefined outcomes. So it might not get you exactly where you want to go. Can you freestyle your outcomes and then retroactively build a path to that? That would be closer to personal learning, wouldn't it? You know, it's like, you know, if you take the train, you can choose your path to get to Eindhoven, but you still need to go to Eindhoven or Ierlin or Maastricht or some stop that's actually on the rail line. But if you want to get to, I don't know the name of a town in Holland, some town that's not on the rail line, it's not an option. But if you could pick any location in, say, Holland, and design a path to get to that location, now we're talking about personal learning. Interesting. Hi from Austria. What I really like about this Open MOOC is the worldwide range of participants. I agree. This enhances my personal learning environment. In terms of naming, I agree with Stephen and also like the grocery and restaurant metaphor very much. What I would like to add, we very strongly need both of these options, and we should be free to choose according to circumstances and personal preferences. I personally like those students most who even take their free choice and personalized equals offered and structured learning environments such as university courses. Yeah, I mean, personal does not mean no guidance. Personal means you have the choice to accept guidance or not. You know, we go back to university curricula and courses and grades and things like that. When you go to university, you pick from a predetermined set of courses and programs and therefore learning outcomes. You have to take one of the options that they offer you. Personal university learning would be when you start university, you pick or you define some kind of outcome that you want, and then the university or people behind the university or some mechanism pulls in all the different resources from wherever to give you a university level path to that outcome. So instead of choosing from predefined outcomes, and predefined paths, predefined courses and curricula, these things are designed in response to the actual need that you have. And that gives you a lot more flexibility, right? It could be your need is 15 minutes away. So you're not going to take a 4-year program. Obviously, they're not going to offer the educational equivalent of a 4-year program. So, and that's the sort of thing that you want, though, in a personal university curriculum. Gerald Ardito, this is an interesting discussion. I too like Stephen's cooking imagery. I see the difference between personal and personalized in terms of actors. Interesting. In personal learning, I am the actor. In personalized learning, the system teacher is the actor. We have a few comments here. Is there a role for teachers in me learning or only for me? I've been playing around with words to simplify my thinking on the topic. Do you think me and for me covers what we are thinking? Not quite. I mean, by me and for me, maybe. It's, you know, for me, both personalized and personal are for me. And really it reflects different perspectives on how best to provide for me. And personalized really is the sense that the system knows best what's good for me. And personal is I know best what's good for me. Maybe thinking along those lines. I like the analogy, and I think you can extend it. What about growing your own food for others to eat? Analogous to learners becoming instructors, subject matter experts, coaches, mentors, etc. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. You know, a big part of what I talk about in personal learning is the community as they go through learning processes, as they go through work processes, actually generating learning resources and learning opportunities. This was the core of the paper on open educational resources and the sustainability of that system that I authored for OECD a number of years ago. The only sustainable and responsive mechanism for producing open educational resources is to source them from the community. So part of learning actually becomes producing the resources that the next generation of learners will be able to choose from and pick from in order to advance their learning. You learn in part by teaching. And so this actually does map into growing your own food. In our own internal work here at NRC, trying to boil down the LPSS system to its absolute minimal basis. What does the minimal viable product for an LPSS look like? There are 4 stages, right? Find, view or use, create or build or do in some way, and then share. Everybody focuses on the first 2. Actually, pretty much everybody focuses on the first, find, right? That's the solution to everything in personal learning, find. And sometimes they think about, well, once you found something, how do you actually view it? But really, the most crucial stages of learning are in the doing and the sharing. That's why I posted, you know, on Twitter a week or 2 ago, right? It's the doing where learning happens. And it's funny because the response to that from the Twitter sphere was, well, everyone knows this. John Dewey said this. This is not unique at all. What you're saying is boring and trivial. Well, yeah, what I'm saying was boring and trivial. But when you look at the actual effort expended in the learning technology sphere, it's on the finding and the using. What is an XMOOC, right? It's looking at videos, right? It's, you know, there's a little bit of doing and pretty much no sharing. What is a site like Degree, right? Finding a whole bunch of stuff and then viewing the stuff. And that's the end of it. So, yeah, I like the garden metaphor. I like it a lot. Great discussion, says Vintage Guitarists. I agree. I agree. The grocery store restaurant imagery could be refined to include curation, the recommendations of the cooks, and then the opportunity to receive directed learning, take cooking lessons, immersive participation, be mentored by one or more of the cooks as an active cook, and then receive feedback from the restaurant's patrons. Sure, yeah. All four stages are there, right? Because you're actually doing cooking, you're creating something, and then you share it by serving to patrons at a restaurant, and you get that all important feedback. As you pointed out earlier, your PLE is really an assemblage of the tools that make sense for you. Yeah. Robert says, personal versus personalized learning. The terms personal and personalized have become buzzwords in recent, well, not good, maybe, with personal learning environments and personalized search. Gives me a chance to add a link to this tool. In this tool, let's see what he linked to, because now I'm curious. Now it's personal. Oh, something from Monash. Yeah. Oh, okay. This is an article from 2013. And making things personal, making things personalized. Well, and this goes back to the disclaimer that I always make. Nothing I say or do is unique to me or an invention of me. Somebody else has already done it. I'm not sure how far back I did personal versus personalization, but let's see what they'd say here. Personal has the following meanings: of, pertaining to, or coming as from a particular person, individual, private, a personal opinion, related to, directed to, intended for a particular person, intended for use by one person, a personal car, referring or directed to a particular person. Okay. Whereas personalized, to have marked with one's initials, name, or monogram, to personally stationary. To make personal, as applying a general statement to oneself. To ascribe personal qualities, to personify. To design or tailor to meet an individual's specifications, needs, or preferences, as a personalized search engine or personalized learning. So, personal learning, it's all about who's doing it. Yeah. I agree. So this is a pretty good reference, and I'll keep this one around to toss into the mix for today's newsletter as well. Let's go back to the discussion. Personalized is where something makes choices to make something suit me more. So that means based on data and projections, probabilities, and models, and aware of context. It sounds to me like personalized Google Ads. But there's some value, right? But, he continues, they are just in time and in context to what you're actually interested in. So the ads are either useful or much less annoying. Yeah. Personalized is better than nothing. Totally granted. In the old days, websites used to pop up stuff that you had zero interest in and make it hard to get rid of them, etc. Yeah. So personal learning is more like informal learning where you have control over direction and motivation. Exactly. We would expect to use multiple channels to learn about a topic or issue. Yep. We would expect a social and emotional component. Maybe. Maybe. We should expect to have choices in these areas. But, I do a lot of my learning just strictly on my own. A lot of my learning strictly on my own. Learners can be more confident and braver and may try action sooner or do an immersive jump into the deep end. You can choose multiple sites, tools, approaches, and services in your personal learning environment, but there are many issues integrating these diverse channels into a whole. Absolutely. That's why building a personal learning environment is so hard. That architecture that I showed you in the video yesterday, there's an awful lot of moving parts to that architecture because there are so many different ways you can interact, create content, receive content, do activities, etc. Many tools now provide ways to integrate diverse channels. ifttt.com is an example, but they are imperfect, excepting LPSS, of course. No, LPSS is still currently imperfect, probably always will be, but we hope to be better than the alternatives. We can hope for better tools for personal learning environments, etc. With personal learning, you have a current learning support need and seek out ways to meet this need within your situation. Exactly. That's exactly. You're choosing your objective, and then the system creates a path to that objective for you. Maybe you have a standard array of chosen tools that generally and approaches that generally work for you. You're self-directed in this pursuit and choose what makes sense to you, and so on. Absolutely, totally agree. Teresa says PLE versus PLE, similar but different and opposite. In short, PLE, capitalized, student-centered, where he, she is free to learn, free to choose whatever reliable means, online or offline, offer the best options, etc. PLE, lowercase, system-centered, based on control parameters, designers, tutors, formal academic curricula, etc. Agreed. Emma again, and reading a similar thread, it strikes me that we're often saying similar things, but for some people the actual terminology is critical. Yeah, I'm one of them sometimes. For others, what's happening is more important. Okay. It may well be related to a personal learning preference style, should you believe in them. It also highlights the importance of good communication between people. From an educational point of view, it also highlights the need to ensure shared meaning. If the course is going to be examined, which luckily this isn't, then learners have to learn to use the right terms regardless of personal preference. Well, exactly, and that's why it's not examined, right? Because we don't want to force people to use a certain set of terms. I mean, we're kind of going meta here, but I think the meta is a little bit important, and I don't think we want to ignore this. I have a lot of issues with the concept of shared meaning, and I've said in many cases, in many talks and presentations, that really there is no such thing as shared meaning. I did a talk at it was in Snowmass. It was an EDUCAUSE thing a number of years ago, where I attacked that concept directly because this idea that when I use a word and you use a word, that we mean the same thing by that word, that idea is empirically false. And it's easy to demonstrate how false it is. If you take a word like Paris, everyone knows the word Paris. If I said this course is going to be based in Paris, people kind of get it, right? But if you take the word Paris and list what that word means to you, right? What thoughts does the word Paris give you? The city, the capital of France, the plaster of Paris Hilton, Paris Trout, Tom Paris from Star Trek, the left bank, the Eiffel Tower. You could go on, and each person's list will be different. If there is identity in these lists, it's an accident. It's a total accident. Yeah, there's a cluster, probably, depending on what language you're speaking. Um, we can form a word cloud around the idea of Paris, but if the more deeply we get into this, if we look at, we have our word Paris, we have our list of words like plaster. Now let's look at what everybody means by plaster, right? We're going to get, again, different lists. So we're kind of, when we communicate, we're kind of in the dark, right? This doesn't quite match up. And so making it a requirement that the semantics of the communication are exactly the same is, well, that's personalization, right? You're selecting from a predefined set of words. Really, meaning is personal. And what we ought to be doing is looking at the syntax, right? Are we both using audio? Are we in the same room? What is the structure that allows our words to actually interact with each other? And then each of us will take away from it their own meaning. Moving back to, we're getting close to the end of this. So I'm going to go back to sharing. Screen share, start screen share. So if discourse, Emma continues, is more important than respecting others' use of words becomes critical. Yes. As well as being clear about how you're using them. Yes. My gut feeling is that for those of us who are native English speakers, it's easier to change a word to suit others' choices than it is for those who are writing in English as an additional language. Absolutely. And one of the things that I am most aware of when I write, when I talk, when I communicate with other people is that my really precise use of words, and I'm really careful about the words that I use, is different from how other people use these same words. And so there's always the potential for miscommunication. What's his name? Moore, talking about transactional distance, always talked about the interaction, the confirmation of the meaning. So I communicate, you communicate back, and by doing that, we ensure that we have this shared meaning, except it doesn't work that way. It'd be a miracle if that happened. What we're doing is establishing a channel, if you will, but the meanings stay the meanings on individual sides. Okay, and that's the end of that thread. So I think, and I'm just going to see if there's anything really recent. Initial reaction to LPSS.me, and this is from FG Raver. I don't know what the first name would be, so Graver. So let's see. I really like the idea. Having a central place to connect all my learning activities is great. Thank you. Kind of like what LinkedIn could be if it didn't have the creepy corporate bias. Yeah. Adding competencies is simple and straightforward, both from the existing list and creating new ones. I can foresee, however, the list of competencies becoming quite unmanageable as people continue to add your own. Yeah, noted. And that's a problem with lists, or even especially the box type representation in general. The more space each one of these things takes up, the less of them you can put on the screen. But even with little tiny text, you're limited to what you can put on the screen. We need to manage that. I can't get the LPSS toolkit bookmarklet to work for me. Are you on Safari? No. But you're on Mac OS X. Okay. Okay, sneeze right in the middle of a webcast. The problem may stem from my combined use of uBlock, privacy badger, and HTTPS everywhere. Could well, yeah. That's one of the weaknesses of using bookmarklets and anything like that is, you have compatibility problems. Learning record. I can add things, but I cannot edit or delete them. Yeah, another browser-related issue might be because I'm pretty sure there is an edit function in there. The complete lack of social tools seems like a major drawback. So, yeah, insight into my world. I say we need ways of communicating with other people, developers. Why would we need that? What's the use case? All right. And I say, well, people want to talk to each other. Yes, but what's the learning outcome for that? So there's no social tools in this version. And in ARC, there are social tools. I'm twisting their arms. Again, they don't want to build it, right? People have already built communication tools. Why would you need it in this tool? Well, because, right? So yeah, I get you. They're in the new thing we call ARC. There will be social tools. There will be sharing of resources, and there will be direct interactive communication with people, peer-to-peer. Learning, oh, we got that. How can one build, share a PLN, without social integration? I managed to add my Twitter account in the external account manager, but I can't find any place in the system where that has any impact. Yeah, you're supposed to be able to open a window and tweet comments from your system, but that's not enabled. So yeah, totally get you. That's been a really common reaction to LPSS.me. You're totally not alone in that. And, you know, it's this thing about people are so focused on find, right? Everybody wants to find resources and maybe look at them. But doing stuff, making content, even if it's writing a tweet and sharing it, those are the really essential components to learning. And if we've learned nothing in the last year or so of this program, it's that. Well, I hope we've learned that anyways. So that's going to wrap it up for this session. I see it's Good Friday and I currently have 0 viewers, so I'm not hanging on for the sake of the viewer who's online. I know there will be people watching this later on, which is why I continue with this. Although right now, today, this experience does remind me of Ed Radio, my radio station with 0 listeners. But you know, sometimes these things are worth doing. It's worth creating things. It's worth going through that action. You know, you don't just look, but you make things and you share them, because that's part of the learning process. And what I'm trying to do with this course, for me anyways, is to learn. So there you go. If you haven't finished, or if you haven't filled out your survey, fill out your survey. There's still time. There's a link in the newsletter. And we'll be back next week, bright and early. Yes, I will send something out on Monday with the weekly introduction, etc. And we'll continue from there. We do have the Hangout scheduled for Tuesday. So, and we're getting near the end of the course. But we'll continue on with personal learning and wrap it up, I guess, 2 weeks from today. So, thank you all. See you then.